Hello my friends, today we will talk about the most beautiful fantasy adventure and the comedy called Gulliver's Travels. And the film begins with a middle-aged person named Gulliver, wakes up and starts his morning routine. And he talks with his little toys which are on the shelf. And Gulliver works at the post office. And on this day, he meets with a new employee named Dan. And they become friends. And Gulliver is Dan's manager at the post office. And at the end of the day, they go together to hand over the mail and meet with a journalist named Darcy. And this is the girl that Gulliver loves, but he does not admit it to her. And on the same day, Dan brings notice that he became the postmaster from his first day of the work. And Gulliver has been working in this place for 10 years, but no one respects him. And Dan says that Gulliver is afraid of anything, so he will not develop in his life or career. And Gulliver comes out of the office very nervous, sees Darcy, works late at night. And Gulliver gathers his courage and enters Darcy's office to admit that he loves her and asks her to go out with him on a date. But when he enters, he gets scared and does not say anything. He takes a random paper from her office. Darcy asks him if he wants to take over a job to talk about travel trips. And he agrees immediately, but on that mission, he should have written a travel blog for the next day. And at home, he copied some files randomly. And the next day, he handed it to Darcy, who loved his written skills so much and gave him a new assignment, which is to go to Bermuda Triangle, write about the legends of ships that are destroyed there. And Gulliver agrees immediately to make Darcy love him. And Darcy brings him everything for travel. And there we see someone waiting for Gulliver, taking him to a boat, teaching him how to use the boat. And the journey is simple because the boat works automatically. Finally, Gulliver's journey begins to a triangle of Bermuda. And at first, he enjoys reading a book and sleeping. And then he wakes up to a huge wave in front of him and a sea storm. Wears an air jacket to survive drowning, but his boat shakes strongly. And then we see that Gulliver became above the hurricane, and then he became inside it. And when he opens his eyes, Gulliver feels unable to move his body and sees a group of humans. There's two small, like ants, standing over his body. And their leader introduces himself that he is the leader of the kingdom of Lilliput and his name is Edward, and says about Gulliver that he is a monster. And we see that they tie him to the ground with small ropes, and Gulliver begins to scream out of fear, but he is easily free from the ropes, and he thinks that all this is a dream. And Edward orders his soldiers to drop a monster, and they throw hooks at him and fall to the ground. And Gulliver loses consciousness. And when he wakes up, he sees that they put him on a car, drag him to the kingdom of Lilliput. And all the small people went out to see a monster. And they arrive at the palace of King Theodore. And the daughter of the king, Princess Mary, pities Gulliver and asks Edward, "Does it necessary to tie him like this?" Edward tells her that this monster, he is a spy for the hostile kingdom of Blefuscu. And finally Gulliver speaks, asking the king, "Where am I?" And the king's assistants, "You are in the kingdom of Lilliput, the greatest nation in the world." And Gulliver does not believe what's going on around him. And then we see him locked up in a cave. And he sees in prison a small person imprisoned by Edward because he tried to flirt with the princess. And Edward arrives. He hears them. They make fun of him. They say about him, the purple man. He gets angry at them and tells them that he will imprison them for life. But Gulliver tells him that the word purple man means courage. Edward rejoices in this answer and takes them to a land to plow. They take advantage of the size of Gulliver, tie him to a machine, and start tilling the earth. And then they hear the sound of the alarm coming from the palace, which means that the kingdom of Blefuscu began attacking them. And they tried to take the princess and set fire inside the palace. And Edward quickly went to the palace and ordered his soldiers not to help the princess because he is the one who will save her. But Gulliver's friends asks Gulliver to help the princess because Edward will not arrive in time. And Gulliver hits them easily and protect the princess. But the king and his secretary are inside the fire, and Gulliver urinates on the fire and extinguishes the fire. And everyone applaudishes for Gulliver because he saved the king. And here the king orders to get him out of prison with his friends and thanks him for his courage and invites everyone to dinner to celebrate this occasion. And Edward gets very upset because the king praises someone else other than him. And the king asks Gulliver, "Where are you from?" And he answers him, "From Manhattan." And people think that he is the president of Manhattan because he is the bravest among them. And for the first time in his life, Gulliver feels that he is a hero and tells them that people in Manhattan used to say about him, "the wonderful president." And everyone believes him except Edward. Gulliver then shows them the Titanic and tells them that this is his life story, and everyone is sad about that story and his sad life. And Edward asks him how he managed to survive after he drowned, and Gulliver answers, "I was resuscitated." Then we see Gulliver's friends asks Gulliver to help him impress Princess Mary, and they go together to the palace, and Gulliver hides and sings a song, and Gulliver's friends dances. And the princess starts loving him. Then Edward calls her because he wants to flirt with her because they were going to get married because Edward is a brave person. But the princess doesn't like him. And then we see the soldiers find Gulliver's boat, and Gulliver arrives at a place where his mobile works and finds 12 voice messages from Darcy. And she is angry with him because he stole the blog and didn't write it. And she wants to travel to Bermuda Triangle and write the report and does not need Gulliver. And we see that Gulliver does not want to return to New York and see Darcy again, so he decides to stay in Lilliput. But Edward does not like this decision and tells the king that he feels uncomfortable with Gulliver. But the king tells him that he trusts Gulliver and gives Gulliver the name of the new general and demotes Edward to deputy general. And Edward is very jealous of Gulliver and he freezes the defense system of Lilliput in order to Belvoja to fight them. And indeed, Belvoja attacks them as soon as it sees that their defense has become weak. And they would reach the kingdom through the sea and throw fire shells at it. Since Gulliver is the new general, he must confront them, and Gulliver enters the water to stop them, but they throw fire at him, but he is not affected. In the end, he wins easily, and he is the savior of the kingdom. And the people in the kingdom fulfill all Gulliver's wishes, and the king appoints soldiers to cut Gulliver's hair. And one day, Edward enters the princess's room and tells her that he can see her as he wants because he loves her. But the princess finally tells him that she does not love him and does not want him. Edward gets very angry and goes to the kingdom of Belvoja and asks for help from the king in order to help him to make a robot in order to win a battle against Gulliver. Because the soldiers found a book, How to Make Your Own Robot, in Gulliver's boat, and the king agrees to help him. And after a few days, we hear the alarm again, and this means that Belvoja attacked Lilliput. And Gulliver prepares for battle with the small soldiers, but he is very surprised when he sees a huge robot, and Edward controls the robot and challenges Gulliver, and Gulliver is forced to accept the challenge and tries to remove the robot, but does not move from its place. And Edward raises Gulliver and forces him to admit his defeat. Gulliver admits everything and that he is not a president, and here the king and the princess are surprised by his betrayal, and Edward sends him to a deserted island, and when he reaches the island, a giant girl takes him, and this island is the place of the giants. And the girls think that Gulliver is a toy and puts him in the Barbie house. And we return again to the kingdom of Lilliput, and Darcy has arrived on the island, and Gulliver told everyone that Darcy is his princess, so Edward knew her and imprisoned her, and Darcy watches King Theodore and the queen in the prison because Edward imprisoned them after Gulliver's defeat. And Prince Gulliver decides to go to the island in order to save his friend, and despite his small size, he safely reaches the island, and Gulliver sees a pilot and knows that he is from the American Air Force, and Gulliver uses the pilot's parachute to escape and return to the kingdom of Lilliput. And the first thing Gulliver does is go to jail and confesses to Darcy that he loves her, and she forgives him for stealing the plug. And Gulliver challenges Edward in a battle to help Lilliput, and because he wants to show them his courage. And the next day, Gulliver and Edward prepare to battle, and Gulliver has the only condition that Edward return the kingdom to King Theodore if Gulliver wins the battle, and if he loses, Edward destroys the kingdom. And Edward agrees, and the battle begins, and Edward wins easily, but Gulliver's friend runs quickly and enters the rowboat and defeats Edward from the inside, so the rowboat's influence disappears from Gulliver, and he can easily defeat Edward. And they all celebrate this victory, which was achieved thanks to the courage of Gulliver's friend, who begs permission to flirt with the princess. Suddenly, we see that Edward starts running fast and takes the princess hostage, but the princess gets very angry with Edward and beats him. And we see that the Blefuscu king and King Theodore will start the war, but Gulliver stops them and makes peace between them. And finally, Gulliver returns with Darcy to New York on their repaired boat. And after several weeks, we see that Gulliver quits his job at the post office and becomes a tour clerk and lives a happy love affair with Darcy. And here the film ends, after the most beautiful adventure. Share your opinions in the comments, and don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel to receive everything new. Miss Lambada was with you. Goodbye, my friends.